Random House Audiobooks presents The Great Republic by Winston Churchill. Read for you by Winston S. Churchill.
The Great Republic, A History of America. My grandfather, Winston Churchill, took enormous pride in his American heritage. This audiobook stands as a tribute to him. It is also a testimony to the faith that he had in the theme of Anglo-American unity, a theme that transcended his life and achieved its apotheosis in World War II with the march to victory of the armies of Great Britain, the Commonwealth, and the United States. Thanks to their sacrifices, the nations of Europe were liberated from Nazi tyranny. Churchill was half American through his mother, the glamorous Miss Jenny Jerome of Brooklyn, New York, and on the occasion of his first address to a joint session of the United States Congress on December 26, 1941, he could not resist alluding to this fact, teasing the assembled senators and members of Congress with the mischievous suggestion, "If my father had been American and my mother British, instead of the other way around, I might have got here on my own." Through his maternal grandfather, Leonard Jerome, sometime proprietor and editor of the New York Times, he had at least two forebears who fought against the British in the American War of Independence. One great-grandfather, Samuel Jerome, served in the Berkshire County Militia, while another, Major Libius Ball, of the 4th Massachusetts Regiment, marched and fought with George Washington's army at Valley Forge. Furthermore, Leonard Jerome's maternal grandfather, Reuben Murray, served as a lieutenant in the Connecticut and New York regiments, while his wife Clara's grandfather, Ambrose Hall, was a captain in the Berkshire County Militia at Bennington. Not only did he have revolutionary blood in his veins, but it is believed Native American as well. According to family tradition, Jenny's maternal grandmother was half Iroquois. In recent times, genealogical researchers have cast scorn on the suggestion that Jenny's ancestry is anything other than American colonial of English background. However, we Churchills are not so easily to be deprived of our Native American ancestry, in which we take very great pride. In opposition to those who doubt it, I would merely assert that Winston's mother, Jenny, and her sister, Leonie Leslie, were convinced of it. Anita Leslie, in The Fabulous Leonard Jerome, quotes her grandmother, Leonie Leslie, remarking on her exceptional energy as saying, "That's my Indian blood, only don't let Mamma know I told you." Having inherited from my grandfather portraits of his maternal grandparents, Leonard and Clara Jerome, the physical fact of the marked Native American features of Clara leaves no doubt in my mind as to the truth of the matter. While researching my family's American heritage on the Internet, thanks to the Mormons who've recently made available 30 years of their researches on both sides of the Atlantic, I stumbled on the fact that one of my ancestors, John Cook, who died in Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1694, had been born in Leiden in Holland in 1607. Knowing that half the pilgrims aboard the Mayflower had been known as the Leiden community, Walloon Protestants escaping religious persecution, I was prompted to wonder if any of my forebears had made that momentous journey. Within seconds, via the Mayflower website, I was able to call up the passenger manifest of all 102 passengers and was fascinated to discover that Winston Churchill, at 10 generations removed, had not one but 3 ancestors who sailed on the Mayflower, and who, as importantly, were among the mere 50 who survived the rigours of that first winter on the inhospitable shores of Cape Cod in New England. John Cook, a lad of just 13, was one of those passengers, as was his father Francis, and his future father-in-law Richard Warren. I was fascinated to learn that through them we are linked to no fewer than 3 Presidents of the United States, Ulysses S. Grant, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and George Bush, as well as to Alan B. Shepard, Jr., the first American in space and the 5th man to walk on the moon. It is no wonder that an injection of American pioneering and revolutionary blood kick-started to new triumphs the Marlborough dynasty, which had slumbered through 7 generations since John Churchill, 1st Duke of Marlborough, who in a series of dazzling victories at the turn of the 18th century had humbled France's son king, Louis XIV. In November 1895, 3 weeks shy of his 21st birthday, Winston, a lieutenant in the 4th Hussars, snatched a few weeks' leave from his regiment to visit Cuba with the aim of observing the Cuban Revolutionary War against Spain. Getting there involved travelling by way of New York. Thus, on the 9th of November, Winston Churchill arrived in New York Harbour aboard the Royal Mail ship Etruria, and first set foot in his mother's homeland and the city where she had been born and brought up. It is evident that he did so with singularly little enthusiasm, for he was impatient to get to Cuba. Indeed, the day before landing in New York, he wrote to his mother from on board ship, "I look forward eagerly to reaching our destination, and it is possible we may cut down our stay in New York to a day and a half instead of 3. His visit, clearly, was a revelation, and it did not take long for the young Winston to become captivated by the spirit and excitement of America. Within a day of his arrival, he was writing to his mother, "What an extraordinary people the Americans are! Their hospitality is a revelation to me, and they make you feel at home and at ease in a way that I have never before experienced. On the other hand, their press and their currency impressed me very unfavourably." It is no wonder that he extended his stay in New York to 6 days, and that in each of his 15 visits to America over the span of 65 years he derived the same delight and inspiration from America as he did on his first visit. From an early age, Winston rejoiced in his American ancestry, and, as an enthusiastic student of history, the great events in the saga of the American nation held a powerful attraction for him. Indeed, so impassioned did he become that in 1929 he personally tramped several of the battlefields of the American Civil War. Churchill's love of America was to endure throughout his life, until, by the chance of history, it fell to him to provide the leadership at a critical juncture in the greatest war of history that crucially enabled Britain to hold out, though the rest of Europe had fallen beneath the Nazi jackboot, until, in the fullness of time, the United States was able to join the conflict. Though confident that Britain, sustained by her empire and commonwealth overseas, could hold out in her island, he was sufficient of a realist to acknowledge that only with the full-hearted commitment of the United States could the liberation of Europe be achieved and the defeat of Hitler accomplished. It was in recognition of his contribution to victory in World War II that on April 9, 1963, President John F. Kennedy conferred upon Churchill the remarkable distinction of honorary citizenship of the United States. By then 88 years of age and infirm, he was not strong enough to make the journey to Washington in person, but deputed my late father, Randolph, and myself to represent him. In his reply, read by my father, to the President's citation, my grandfather declared, "I am, as you know, half American by blood, and the story of my association with that mighty and benevolent nation goes back nearly 90 years, to the day of..."
Sample complete. Ready to continue?